I think similarly, the shadow monster raises those same questions, right? Of like, what does it mean to be human? If it is, as they alluded to, something that has kind of morphed, is it still human, or at what point did it stop being human?
Hi, ghouls, gals, and spooky pals. Welcome back to the Monstration Club. I'm Jen, and I'm here with my best friend.
Emma.
And today we are going to be talking about nightmare fuel. Nightmare fuel specifically as it relates to, I thought you were going to maybe hold up the book.
I hold it. Yeah, we're good. We're good.
Crown of Midnight. Um,
Yay!
caref careful for spoilers if you have only read the first Throne of Glass book. This is book number two. Um, I have read a little bit further than Emma. This is where Emma is, and so we are going to limit this discussion to what we know as of the end of book two. So we're going to be obviously talking about the two monsters. One appeared in Throne of Glass. A new one has appeared in Crown of Midnight. And first of all, I'm just really interested to hear Emma's thoughts on the two.
Yeah. So the Ritterak was scary. We still don't even have a name for what this is
We
as of
don't.
yet,
Okay.
except for maybe like shadow monster.
Okay.
Um, yeah. So I really the Ritterak was scary in the way that many other books have monsters that are scary. Like it was scary, but it didn't feel unique to this, if that makes sense.
I think what was scariest about the Ritterak was that almost like before we knew what it was,
Yes.
because we
Hmm.
knew something was happening and it was terrible and it was dismembering people, but we didn't. I think once we knew what it was, it became a lot less scary to me.
Okay, so that's very interesting and very true because I think aesthetically, this shadow monster scares me more, which we'll talk about why. But in terms of the damage that's been done, the Ritterak was like pretty terrifying
Yeah.
in terms of dismembering and killing people. That was not great.
And just not knowing what was doing it was
Hmm.
really frightening, I thought. And then once there was a name for it, then once we saw what it was, I was like, oh, my imagination stopped running so wild because
Hmm.
I could imagine it, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, but
It's
you
kind of, I was gonna say that kind of reminds me of Alien. I know we're both fans of Aliens. Did you watch Alien Romulus?
know, but I should, and then we should do a video on that. We should do an alien video,
We
really, but
absolutely
we're getting
should.
sidetracked. But
I
yes.
really liked Alien Romulus, actually. I thought it was really good. I think this is the year of sequels that are kind of pay homage to the originals in a way that's fun. But the original Alien movie, I can't remember how many times it was, but they only show the actual alien like two or three times throughout the
Hmm.
whole movie. Most of it is there's this thing and it's behind the scenes and it's like building the anticipation. And it kind of reminds me, the Ritterak reminds me of that a little bit, in that it was actually scarier before it was on screen. And
Hmm.
limiting the screen time helped build the anticipation of it. That's a good point.
What
That was
about the shadow monster?
so the shadow monster terrifies me a
Yeah.
lot. Not so much because it's really powerful, but because it appears that it was at one point human, or it has a lot of human-like qualities. And that
Very
is
humanoid.
very scary to me. That is very scary to me. Because you can just like, what what turned a human into something like that? What's still left of its humanity and what's not? Like, I guess you just relate to it more. Yeah. Which, okay,
Can,
so
can you remind me if it spoke?
I don't think it did.
Okay.
I can't remember fully. Yeah, I don't think it did. Or maybe it like groaned or
Okay.
made a noise. If we're wrong, please tell us because I can't
Yeah.
fully remember.
And I
It
can't
reminds so
either.
I started reading Tenders the Flesh, I'm like 20 pages in, and it's really good. And reading it, I was like, this woman has to be a vegetarian. She's a vegan. But it makes me question a lot of like what does it mean to be a human?
Mm.
And I think similarly, the shadow monster raises those same questions, right? Of like, what does it mean to be human? If it is, as they alluded to, something that has kind of morphed, is it still human, or at what point did it stop being human?
I'm curious to your thoughts on it being human and not being human, because correct me if I'm wrong, but it did come from like another world, like it came through a portal, right?
No, so
Not
we're
this
talking
one.
about different things. So the shadow monster is the one that was locked under the dungeons, which could have
Oh,
come from a different world, but I don't think
okay.
so. I think,
Okay.
but you're talking about the one that came through the portal.
Yes. That's what I thought we were talking about. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, which one do you think is scarier now? Because those two are very different.
The one in the dungeon.
Okay, that
The
was a
one in the
very strong
dungeon.
answer.
That's definitely the one that I find the scariest out of all of them. If we didn't know what the
Mhm.
Ritterak was, I might still find that scary just with the unknown. Maybe that's
Mhm.
my own like problem with dealing with uncertainty. Um, but definitely the thing that was it under the library in the
Yeah,
dungeons? Under the
yeah.
library, yeah. That, yes. Yeah. Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense, Emma. Okay.
Yeah, it was like I don't think the other one is human.
I,
Um,
yeah, we probably could have nailed that out without me giving any spoilers and it would have been okay. I just wanted to be so light on what my input was. Definitely scarier.
so what makes that scarier than the portal demon for you?
The humanoid features, the with this one when I read book two, um, and maybe that's part of why that wasn't the one I was thinking. I definitely felt that it wouldn't be the last
Hmm.
of that we saw, and that it was probably just gonna get worse from there. Like I had this foreboding sense of dread with it.
Hmm.
Um, who knows if it came to fruition or not? I do, but Emma doesn't, so that'll be fun. But
I do.
um,
You're like, who knows? Except me.
except
I
me.
know.
Um, but I think it scared me too because we saw it very briefly.
Mm.
Um, versus the thing in the portal, which is what I thought we were talking about, didn't scare me very much because so much
Mm.
else was going on too. Like the
Mm.
whole setting of what was happening under the library was much scarier as
Yes,
well.
that's true. There was a lot more anticipation. That okay, so that's interesting just structurally in terms of her writing. She
Hmm.
set them up very differently, even though they're both creepy monsters. The portal monsters were set up as a device to help her show that Selena, spoiler, is Fae, versus the creepy monster under the dungeon was set up to show you the creepy monster under the dungeon, right?
Yeah.
Which maybe infers that I would suggest that infers that she intended that one to be creepier because there was going to be more for it. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I would anticipate. Like that whole scene was set up to show that monster.
Versus showing her powers.
Mm-hmm. The portal monsters, portal demons, were also set up to show how valiant Chaol is.
You had to get it in there. You had to get it in there. Yeah, go on. Go on. Let's hear about Kale. Kale the hero. My
Okay, you're
hero.
saying that like it's not true,
Oh my gosh,
but it is
Emma.
true. Chaol jumped into a demon portal to save a dog.
Yeah.
And he likes Fleetfoot, but he really saved it because Selena wanted the dog saved, right? Like that's the real reason he went in. He jumped into a portal of demons, Jen, and then was batting them away with his bare hands. And do you think he's boring?
I do think I think that is honestly one of the best things that anyone has ever done, maybe in all of fiction, was saving her dog for her in such a
Uh-huh.
selfless way, truly, because he didn't care
Hmm.
about the dog. And in fact, Dorian gave her the dog, so it wasn't even like
Hmm.
there was, but I find his sense of honor and his sense of duty and his rigid adherence to rules upsetting. And if I was Selena, I would be upset by it and I wouldn't even bother. But he did save her
Okay.
dog. So that relationship was good for something, I guess.
Okay, so hear me out though. He, well, I feel like you're mad at him because he's good at his job. You're like, he always like listens to what his boss tells him to do.
This is this horrible, horrible tyrant. Yes, I am mad at him for being good at his job.
Okay, he is naive. That is true. That is a fault of his.
He knows, Emma. He knows that this guy is not like great news, and he's still like, oh well, it's my job. So
Okay, I do think that's interesting about his character though, because I think she's made him likable. Other people tell me if you're on Team Jen or Team Emma with this, but I feel like she's made him likable while making him work for this evil person. And I don't think she's fully reconciled that. Like she's given a little bit of like he's been friends with Dorian and kind of like his dad is worse, maybe. So it's maybe the lesser of two evils. But I don't think she's reconciled why he would work for this person who's just genociding people. And also why he hasn't killed anyone, even though he works for the most terrible person in
I
the world.
think that's kind of like Occam's razor, though, and the simplest explanation is probably the explanation in that he's just kind of weak and is like, oh, well, this is my job, so I'm gonna do it, even though I know
Okay,
something's afoot. I mean, that's the way I interpret it. Um,
well, that's why you don't like him.
it's so interesting though, because talking about Kale with you makes me dislike him even more.
Really? You
I
dislike him
think
more?
I think so. I think your defense of him, I'm like, no, let me tear it all down. Let me just get in there and bat it away.
Stare at the
I don't know.
wall.
I don't know. I don't know what's happening to me. It's almost like an animalistic, like, no, Emma.
Save her. Save her from Gale. Well, okay,
Uh,
but I also think that he doesn't have a rigid code of honor because he's hiding this secret about Selena, and he's been hiding secrets about her for the whole book. Right?
so do
I
you think
did.
he's going to continue to hide the secret that he found out at the end?
So what's really interesting about that, I feel like the answer is no based on how much you're nodding your head and how angry you seem.
No,
Uh,
don't. No, I'm just mad about Kale. Don't read anything into the way I am.
well, if he doesn't keep the secret, it's going to be really hard to like him still, I will say. If he tells Dorian that's okay, if he tells the king that's not okay, but it's also interesting because he has decided he loved her, decided he's going to save her above duty, and then at the end he's like, "Oh my God, she's the queen, and I just sent her to this place." But I'm like, you already knew she was royalty. And like, I don't know how much of a difference that should actually make. Like, I think that was one of the things where I'm like, I don't actually think that should make much of a difference. I don't know that her writing leading to that felt like that conclusion is what I would have come to for his character.
I think I guess that's interesting because I think it's like one of the last lines of the book when he's like, and I
Hmm.
just sent her to be like with her allies or whatever. Um, but there's something there with that final phrase at the end of the book, I think, is heavily tied into the way I think about Kale, regardless of what happened afterwards. Just because all of a sudden, and maybe it is poor writing or character development, but I don't think it is. I think it's his sense of honor, and he's like, "Oh no, I did mess up."
Hmm.
Like it, rather than because he did know, he knew there was something special about her. He knew she was royalty, but I don't think he fully understood the extent of like what she was. And then when he saw her become Fae, it was like, "Oh, this could be really bad for my kingdom."
But then he still sent her to the Fae. And
He
he sent
did,
her to the Fae because she was Fae. It
but he
feels,
didn't know she was like queen of them at the
but
time.
he
Not
knew
queen
that
of
she was
them, but
royalty. And it
he
feels a
did.
little bit like the difference between sending like the president somewhere versus like a senator somewhere. Like they're both pretty important. Like, I don't know, it felt a little thin to me in terms
Okay,
of like
I can
you
buy
were
that.
fine when she was royalty and you knew she was mythical and magical, but now that she's like two steps above that, you're not fine with it. It felt a little bit like if you were fine with her being royalty, you knew that she was from this lost kingdom, you knew that she was magical, you knew she could destroy everything, and you're okay with that, but she's like two steps ahead of that. Now you're not okay with that. That
Maybe
felt
it
a
was
little.
maybe it was like the sense of, oh, she can take care of herself. And I thought I was protecting her. Maybe that's part of it for him, in that he was like, oh, I didn't need to like send her to allies because she's obviously like more powerful
Mhm,
than I thought she
mhm,
was. Maybe that's part of it for him. I don't know. I agree with you. I can definitely
mhm.
get on board with thinking that's thin.
Okay, but that's an interesting point too. That's, I guess, my last thought is that it's interesting that he would send her there to protect her from allies when, like, she is the most dangerous person on the planet. So
Yeah.
he need to. And so I think there is something about his character development that maybe, um, you know what it is? Okay, this is what it reminds me of a little bit. Stranger Things, one of my biggest pet peeves about Stranger Things is that Eleven is not a character, she is exposition. Everything about
Mm.
her storyline is used to describe why something is happening and to move the plot along. She as a character is actually not very strong. And this makes me sad because I actually really like Chaol as a character, but I feel like she's developing this character, but then when she needs something to happen, she makes him do something out of character to move the plot along. Maybe that's not true, but I think maybe that's part of like she's developing this character, like, but then she'll make him do things out of character, but it's always because she needs the plot to go a certain way.
I can buy that too. He does seem to be, and maybe that's part of my problem with him, is because I
Mhm.
don't feel like there's a lot going up here up
Mhm.
here for him, because literally all he thinks about is like his job and Selena. And so maybe that's part of it
Mhm.
for me too, is I just feel like it would be kind of hollow.
But always in service to the larger plot, right? Like when it's about Selena, it's
Yeah.
because Selena's storyline needs to change in a specific way, whereas Dorian seems more internally consistent as
Yeah,
a
that's
character.
interesting. Maybe that's part of it for me and Kale.
Mhm. And
Because
now
I
I
don't
like
think of
him
my,
less.
I don't know. I hope you don't like him less. I do not dislike Kale. And that's
Mhm.
why when I came at you and I was like swiping away at you, I was like, where is this coming from? I don't dislike him. Um, so sorry if I tore him down for you a little
No,
bit. I
you
didn't.
didn't. But I do think he has, I think the things I like about him are the character she's building. But I also think she does kind of use him in a way to move the plot along that sometimes feels inconsistent with the character she has been building for him, which is
Well,
interesting.
this isn't a spoiler, because you know that she's going to be somewhere else for at
Hmm.
least part of book three. And so maybe that will help develop him as a character rather than as a plot device. Thanks for watching. And if you made it this far, you should totally like and subscribe, because it's completely free and we're really fun and we're really cool. Until for next time, stay spooky, friends.